Everybody. Thanks for joining me. What is the date today? It's the 26th, Wednesday, February 26th. And my buddy Santino's here, and we're going to have a discussion about probably some different markets and um, I think a virus that you can't say, I guess, otherwise you get dinged. So maybe we'll call it CV. And maybe talk about gold a little bit and just check in with the wizard. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. How are you, Moo?
I'm doing great. In crypto news today, I read a little bit about people seem to be up in arms about XRP giving MoneyGram 11 million bucks over 2 quarters last year to continue the partnership. At the same time, MoneyGram came out with a press release saying how they love the product, it's improving efficiencies, they plan on still using it, and couldn't be happier with the partnership. So I kind of feel like people are making a big deal about it. Nothing when it comes to that. In the world of partnerships, it's always about money, and two companies can mutually benefit. I'm not a huge XRP fan. I'd like to get your thoughts on XRP, what you think of it, the direction, and where do you think it's going, and how do you think they're progressing?
Well, the XRP army does not like me. I mean, not that I'm suggesting they're aware of me, and I have no idea who I am, which I'm happy about. But
Sure.
but I'll tell you, that I actually didn't know that news until you mentioned it to me,
Mm-hmm.
when we were chatting. And the reason is because I pay no attention to XRP news.
Sure.
Said many times, I look at the charts. I see that it's the poster child for what's been wrong with the alts technically for the last 2 years. Does it mean it will always stay that way? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I that news that you just gave to me just basically sort of confirms what I've always thought about XRP and always believed it to be. It's a business masquerading as a coin. I mean, you're investing in a business. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to be honest with yourself about what you're investing in. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
And I also believe that when the money eventually does come into the alts, which it will, as sure as the sun comes up tomorrow, that is going to happen. They will buy XRP because it's number 3 on the market cap, and because it's going to go up in price. And it'll go up in price because they're buying it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And keep in mind, I mean, I was joking with you about this, but the people controlling XRP, they're financiers, they're finance people. Imagine Santino owning XRP, the biggest float of XRP. Now imagine what I will do to this coin when the money comes in.
Right.
I will bid it up to ridiculous levels and I will dump it.
Right.
Then I will bid it up again and then I will dump it. And I will use it as my plaything. Right. And that's what XRP is. Do not fool yourself into thinking it's anything but that. Can you make money? 100%. I see it doing. My first jump off on XRP is going to be between 3 and the 330 range. That's where it topped out last time. I do believe when things really get rolling, it'll quickly begin to gap up. You're going to see those kinds of moves. This is not a buy and hold strategy, folks. Not on XRP. It's not an ETH. It's not a Tezos. It's not a BAT. It's not an ETH Classic. That's not what you're investing in here. You're investing in a market vehicle.
Yeah. Wow. So right on. I agree with all that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think one of the things that attracts people is the remittance and the cross-border payments, but we've seen other coins kind of do the same. I don't know at the level of the Ripple company and XRP specifically, but we're seeing some other things as more and more news comes out about XLM and IBM and some other things. We're all seeing that they don't have a lock on that space for sure. But I appreciate you saying that it's kind of a legacy tool. It's a technology tool, but it's kind of a legacy thing masquerading as a new thing. And to be honest with you, I don't know how much about it is new, to be honest with you. When we're talking about distributed database, when we're talking about federated nodes, we're talking about wallets and accounts that can just be shut off. That resembles a lot of things that I already recognize,
Yeah, I know. And the Wall Street class, upper class this will be the coin that they get all their buddies in, right?
Sure.
When they go to their fancy lunches and they're all rubbing shoulders with other billionaires and millionaires, and they start talking about crypto because it gets their attention, this will be the coin that they initially go into, right?
Yeah.
Because it resembles, they recognize it, right, as one of
Yeah.
their own, right?
Yeah.
As one of their family.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I basically paid no attention to XRP news. And once again, I just want to state for everybody, and I'll state this probably at the beginning with some kind of disclaimer, but, Santino and I, we're not professional investment professionals. We are just two friends that like to kind of talk about technology and woo and blockchain and gold and markets and this thing called CV and some other things and whatever. So this is a nice opportunity for both of us just to kind of be free and offer some opinions, and hopefully those opinions help people. Look at my attire. I mean, I'm wearing like a athletic shirt, right? Already put in my rounds for this morning, and we'll be going to put in some rounds this afternoon. So you really should not listen to anything I say and think it's investment advice.
Yeah, that goes for me as well. I've said many times, I'm not an investment advisor and I'm not giving advice. I'm simply giving my opinions on things. And once in a while, I'll share what I'm personally doing. But, I can't possibly, who knows what people's individual situations are. I just, so please don't take
Exactly.
anything I say. You should always do your own research on stuff. And if you're not sure, there are some great investment advisors out there. I know people that do that for a living. There's a lot of find an honest one and rely on them. And there, a lot of people don't take advantage of that, and they probably should.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Um, Gold is kind of telling us a story. What's gold telling us right now? You've always been one that said, you look for truth in these markets, and you believe that a lot of times the real world can be reflected in these markets. What's gold telling us right now?
Well, it's interesting. I was, uh, I've said a number of times that if we get like a serious correction, which was bound to happen, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said, look, it's the markets can be spooked very easily where we are right now. It won't take much to tip them over. And if that happens, everything gets sold. Don't think that your crypto or your PMs in the initial reaction are going to protect you from that, because they won't, right? The US dollar is the only thing left standing, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Everything, even T-bills got sold off. It didn't matter what it was. There was no asset class that didn't get sold off.
Yeah.
But it's temporary. And gold has been on a run as well. So they wanted an
Big time.
excuse to take some off, right? I
Yep.
mean, look at the chart of gold. This thing has been on a tear.
Yep.
So coming off 5, 6, 7% or whatever it has, that's no biggie.
Yeah.
That's healthy. And that's basically what happened. People were locking in profits on gold. There was a lot of people long gold. Big money was long gold because money is getting fearful. Gold is telling you that. And when they saw that everything was getting killed, they said, well, let's lock in some gains. This is
Yeah.
to be expected. And crypto is also suffering from that.
For sure.
It's down today. And this is just a guess on my part. I
Yeah.
think that in the next 48 hours, we'll probably see things stabilize
Okay.
with gold and crypto. They're kind of working together. And then we resume our uptrend. This is not a break of the uptrend. This is just a pause. And the dynamics will be changed. The dynamics will be changed. And when it's apparent that dynamics have changed, then we get the second wave in.
Yeah.
Right?
I
The
think.
smart money's been there for a while now
Yep.
in Bitcoin and gold.
Yep.
Once it becomes very apparent that the game has changed, you're going to see this is when we begin to really pick up some steam.
Yeah. Saw a lot of so around this CV thing, I've read various articles. A lot of them are pretty scary. A lot of them I can discount almost immediately for different reasons. That being said, I'm no medical professional, and I'm definitely not a market professional. So some of these ripples from the issues with the CV stuff is kind of interesting, but we're even seeing divergent stories, right? So I've read, I don't know how many articles in the last week talking about, what the price of fuel oil is going to be, or gasoline, or you name it. Well, oil futures are down. Like, it looks like they've also corrected down. So when you say there's a lot of things that have moved lower, um, I guess with the precious metals, that's correct, right? We're seeing some other prices move down as well.
Yes, absolutely. And that is an indication of where the world is factoring in
Gotcha,
lower growth rates down the
gotcha,
road, right?
gotcha.
So because that's why you're seeing 30-year bonds
Yep,
at all-time lows, the 10-year notes at all-time lows. You're seeing maximum pessimism. That's what you're seeing now.
yeah,
And silver is also being treated as an industrial metal right now.
yep,
That's why it's selling off the way it is, right?
yeah,
Copper, all-time lows, zinc, like these things, there's almost no commodity that has not been hit.
yeah,
Um, so there's a couple of interesting things. First of all, uh, I, consensus is always wrong on these big events, right? A number of months ago,
yep,
it was the virus. This thing is going to be nothing. It's
yep,
going to have no effect. This is just a flu. Okay. Fast forward to now, and it looks like it's upset the entire global supply chain. But now this narrative is also not true,
right,
right? Like now, I was more negative when it first came out, thinking this, and on record saying this is going to be bigger than what we think it is. It's not it. The effects of it is going to be
yeah,
bigger, right?
yep, effects.
Um, the virus itself, I always said, was not, it was going to be a challenge, but we would overcome it. But it's what it triggered that we needed to watch out for. Well, now the trigger has happened. Now we're here. Now I'm saying, look, it's not as bad as what the markets are saying it is, right?
Yeah,
So, wherever I see certainty or a narrative, like I've said a million times, I bet against it. I always win.
yep,
I've never not won, right? If
right,
you'd have gone short the markets when this market came out and they were telling you, everybody was whistling past the graveyard, you'd made a lot of money.
yeah,
And if you buy now, if you're buying gold now and you're buying crypto now, you're going to be rewarded.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's, you and I have both talked at length about this divergence in some of the metals, and so silver seems to be pretty much in line with gold. Gold seems to be pretty much in line with platinum. Palladium is the outlier. Palladium has just been on a tear. And I even noticed with this little pullback here in the price of the PMs, or even the run-ups, like palladium is still going nuts. What is going on with palladium? Why is it
Palladium,
different?
palladium is one of the only commodities that in the last 2 days has been positive. I think it's the only commodity out of all the
Okay.
entire index. It's the only thing that's been, it's absolutely remarkable. So as you know, I was on the palladium story many months ago.
Yeah.
And, technically palladium was telling you, like, even if you didn't know what it was, if you're only looking at the charts, it was telling you this thing is gaining a head of steam.
Yep.
And it's certainly surpassed my expectations.
Yeah.
But this is just the perfect storm for palladium. You
Yeah.
have a situation where the most of palladium in the world is mined in either Russia or South Africa, primarily South Africa. Canada has some. I think Australia has some. But the majority is South Africa. South Africa is a mess. And it's doing it's socializing all its industries. It's, it's pulling a Bernie Sanders, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it's nationalizing everything. Production is going down. Electricity prices are going up. They're having all kinds of production problems. Now, the Russians are sitting on a hoard of palladium, but the Russians are smart, right? They
Yeah.
only release, they're watching it go up, and they're like, this is good for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're like the mini OPEC of palladium and platinum. Um, at some point, they're going to smack it down.
Yeah.
Like this is an accident waiting to happen. Like I would not be investing in palladium at right now.
Yeah.
But what I will say, because most people aren't invested in palladium, they're like, well, what do we care? Here's why you should care, because when you look at the palladium chart, that's what your silver chart's going to look like in probably a few months, right? So it's signaling to you what these metals, right now it's a PGM, but it's signaling to you what these metals will do in an inflationary environment.
Yeah.
And that's what we're moving into. We're moving into an inflationary environment. And you will see silver take its proper place. Gold will restore its proper place in the world markets. And Bitcoin and crypto in general, but I'm just using Bitcoin as a proxy for the whole space,
Sure.
is the only true uncorrelated asset to everything else. In other words, it is the only asset, even more so than gold, that's literally not connected to anything else.
Yeah.
You almost can't say that about any other market. Well, you can't. The
Yeah.
rest, every one of the other markets are linked. So now, if you're in Australia or you're in Canada or you're in Europe, gold is already broken out.
Yeah, for sure.
You're already experiencing an all-time high in gold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I hope people were able to, leverage in or gain a position, especially at that, at that USD $1,300 mark or whatever we were at. Wow. And if you're in other currencies, especially some of the failing ones, you're really happy about those moves for sure. Wow. There's so much to talk about. I want to talk about IOTA. First of all, let me just say, I try and surround myself with honest people and people that will tell me the truth and they'll disagree with me. And it's not about agreeing with somebody. It is about trusting somebody that they'll be honest with you when they have tough information to deliver. I only have a few people like that in my life. And I, I really appreciate those people. I also always appreciate kind of the contrarians. I think I'm a contrarian. I'm typically holding a view that only very few hold, and that's okay. And I'm comfortable there. And I think I build an identity there. That being said, um, I'm very happy to surround myself with honest people. Santino, Foothills, Sam, Reggie Middleton. There's numerous people in my life like this. I only mentioned a few. A lot of them are up on the board with us, and I just really appreciate that and appreciate people's opinions. And I think it all makes us a little bit stronger when we can hold a little bit divergent opinions. About this CV thing, I didn't have much. I felt like it was a lot to do about nothing. I felt like a lot was going to be made out of it that wasn't. This is not about being right or being proven right, but I'm even less worried about it now than I was. So that's a good thing. As you talk about the ripples and the effects, yeah, I think we're seeing that now. I think that's going to be a real thing. I think there will be some issues, but I kind of feel like they're going to get a handle on this thing too. Anything?
By the way, I
Yeah.
agree. I think the virus, that part of it, we do get we get a hold of it.
Yeah.
But by then, understand that central banks around the world will have unleashed a tsunami of liquidity to make sure that whatever happens, and ironically, they're basically gonna. That's the pistol, the starter's pistol.
Yeah.
For all the chain event of things that begin to happen down the road. So the virus itself was just really the excuse, right?
Yeah. Yep. And some of our very good friends were saying that exact thing all along, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very true. So IOTA, never been a real big fan. I don't hold any IOTA. My experiences back in the day were wallets that could not understand if the transaction was confirmed or unconfirmed. It liked to bounce back and forth. For the last 12 days, so this is kind of a more technology thing, but for the last 12 days, basically IOTA is offline. And there was a hack. But yet we're seeing, I think the price increased yesterday and it's still number 20. Let me just look somewhere real quick because this is kind of more of a market question. And I think you probably have something to say about this. So today it's down 11%, almost 12%. But it's still number 24, but I think it was up yesterday. So my point is that how can you have a piece of technology like this that basically is not working very well, and it's basically offline for the last 12 days, but people are still buying it. I'm curious.
Yeah, we see that from time to time, more than time to time in cryptos, right? Where
Yeah.
the underlying reality use case of the asset itself is completely divorced from the market action, right? Now, I confess, I don't know much about IOTA. It's not really one that I follow. I don't own it, so I can't. I don't have an intelligent opinion on
Sure.
its technology or what it's doing or whatever. But I can speak generally to uh, that it's not uncommon to see, a failing sort of coin, a coin that's clearly flawed, um, where the believers are still in buying it, or the insiders are in buying it or playing with it. I have no idea what its market cap is or how easily it is to move. But all these assets are relatively small, comparatively speaking, and can be moved for all different kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
So, you will be in this thing, and maybe now it's being used as a trading vehicle. Who knows? Right?
Maybe that's a good point. And I would just like to stress once again, these things are just software, and no matter how bad it is today, that doesn't necessarily reflect what it could look like 4 years from now. It could be one of the coolest pieces of technology on the planet. You get the right people involved, you get the right infrastructure going, right? Get the right use cases behind it.
Does it have a strong following mood? Like, does it have like what's are there some big names behind it or something?
Yeah, so there's always been, this idea of the Internet of Things kind of behind it, and it was viewed as, I think, a main competitor to something like Ethereum Classic when Ethereum Classic really wanted to be the Internet of Things. Um, it's always been fairly quick. It's never been fairly reliable. Anybody that understands technology knows that's kind of a three-legged stool when you're talking about fast or secure or reliable. So it's pretty easy to do two of those things. It's hard to do three. Um, there's some partnerships. Jaguar. I think some other automobile manufacturers and technologies. It's been talked about being used between household appliances. It's been talked about a mechanism for toll booths. Imagine this: you're on the highway, right? You're on the highway. I have a friend that's in AI, and him and I talk about some of this stuff sometimes. And um, so imagine this: you're on the road, right, and somebody's late for work, and they just want to cut in and out of traffic and weave in and out of traffic. Well, there might not be a parking or a driving fine anymore, right? You might pay these drivers just a microtransaction payment every time you pass them or cut them off, right? Isn't that interesting?
Very.
Yeah. So these cars could have wallets in them. Aggressive drivers. Boy, if you cut four people off today, maybe you're paying $40 at the end of the month or something like that. So kind of cool, kind of interesting. Maybe it rewards good driving and people actually stopping and looking and yeah. So sorry, I kind of got off track there, but I think that's kind of the idea is that it's not really a blockchain. It's what they call a Tangle network. There's cool things about it from a technology perspective, but there's just a lot. There's a lot of work yet to be done there. So, yeah, it's not ready, and I don't know if it'll ever be ready. I haven't seen it be ready yet. So,
Is this one of those ones you think just disappears, or do you think they'll get their they'll find their legs again?
well, at the risk of sounding like I know more than I know because I don't, and I don't want to scare anybody that holds it. But let's just say I don't hold any, and I wouldn't be buying
Right. Well, there's your answer.
any. One day if I can play with it and it seems reliable and it seems cool and they can really benefit from this really interesting technology, and just like the cars I mentioned, right? If it needs something that's much more than a blockchain and it does need something like this Tangle to work correctly, then yeah, I might feel completely different about it for sure.
Well, it certainly is a lesson of many that we've seen in crypto where, and I've said from the beginning, look, this entire crypto space, I really don't care what you're invested in or how much you believe in it. Understand this. This is not a buy and hold forever asset class, right?
Yeah.
This is crypto in general is going to experience massive amounts of changes over the next 2 or 3 years. You're going to see market cap leaders go to zero. This is the kind of things we're going to see. We're
Yeah.
going to see coins subsets of coins that we haven't even been developed yet, or we know nothing about, all of a sudden come up, come up the grid, and all of a sudden they just completely take over the space.
Yep.
And then they're the leaders for 6 months, and all of a sudden all those coins are in the top 10 market cap,
Yeah.
right? And then they're knocked off.
Yep.
And, so be aware, this isn't a Warren Buffett strategy. They dragged out poor old Warren, on CNBC there. The day you always know things are bad when they bring out Warren Buffett, right? Because the markets are like down at that, Dow's down 1,000 points. Yeah. I said it before it even happened. They're going to have Buffett on, and sure enough, they did. Sure. And all that's really indicating is how bad the situation is when they bring him out, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, he made that kind of investing is going to be history.
Yeah.
The buy and hold, where I buy a company and I can hold it for 30, 40 years, that's from another era. We will not be experiencing those kinds of markets moving forward. People need to understand this, right? Yeah. And I think people are still locked in. It's not their fault. They're locked in that kind of like narrative.
Sure.
And they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be. These are, I personally, myself, 2 to 3 years, I'd be surprised if I'm holding any crypto at all.
Okay. All right.
I'll be honest. I don't know. I'll have to see what the market looks like then. But maybe it's whatever businesses crypto spawn, right?
And that's actually a very positive thing to connect with what you're already talking about. We're already seeing traditional companies, blockchain companies, now beginning to go public. They're going to do well. They're doing development for a lot of different projects and blockchains and furthering the space. So there's going to be lots of opportunities around this industry and not just a token, right?
Yeah, exactly right. This is the very beginning of this great sort of revolution in how finance and technology meet. This is not the end game. Cryptos is not the end game, folks, right? We can have these discussions as we get closer. Right now, this is the place to be.
Sure.
But I'm just telling you, don't get into this thing where I'm just going to buy, whatever it is, Ethereum or Bitcoin or XRP or whatever it is that you're high on, and I'm going to hold it for the next 10 years. Believe me, you will be broke if you do that.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. So, every week people ask some questions to Sam, about, coin number, 552. And I think people are getting away from that, page number 12 on the coin market cap or on chain effects or whatever. And this is good. When we started having these troubles in the markets and I saw the stock market getting smashed and, some of the CV talk and some of these other things, I thought, wow, these are the times when you want to be holding that top 20, right? The top 15, that top 10. I feel bad for anybody that's picking something on page, like I said, 21 or something and hoping that's going to do well. As you get down further and further into the smaller market caps, you see these things really get smashed, right?
You definitely want to be with quality at the beginning stages. And this has kind of been a mantra of mine, but I've said it over and over again. For a while, I was very heavily weighted towards Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. I've slowly began to divest, move more into Ethereum Classic, some of the blue chip alts, mm-hmm. And with some of the smaller ones, the good smaller ones, the VETs, the Doges, the XLMs, because they're all going to do well. But it'll be the blue chip ones, that protect you, some margin of protection during these big downdrafts while we're going through this transition. And they will, I've said so many times, like they will eat first. They will. Yeah. Eventually, the multiples on these little guys are going to eat Bitcoin's lunch. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm. 100% that's going to happen. But in the beginning, during this transition stage, or where Bitcoin was in a bull market and the alts were in a bear market, which, mm-hmm. by the way, we haven't clearly come out of for the alts.
Sure.
We've been slammed down now. We've gotten rejected at the last sort of little high that we made some time ago. That's not technically good. I think we will eventually move past it in a hurry. But the only thing you can say Bitcoin is clearly in a bull market. You cannot say that about a lot of alts. Look
Sure.
at the XRP chart. That
Yeah.
thing has been on its back, absolutely on its back for 2 years now.
Yeah.
So yes, invest in those waiting for the pounce, because it will come. But just be conscious, be aware that, some things have moved into, ETH Classic is a prime example. ETH Classic started breaking out a few months ago,
Yeah.
and it was showing you where some of these alts were going. Then Tezos picked up. Then, Link, BNB. What are these guys? These are the big guys, right? Tezos is moving into the big boy stage,
Yep.
right? I would stick with those,
Yeah.
my personal view, until we have some certainty.
Yeah.
At the very least, if you're going to add to those blue chip ones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Until we know what's going on.
Yeah. A good rule of thumb that I've always used is, irregardless of the price, right? If I like it, the price almost doesn't matter. And understand, I usually approach things from strictly technical perspective, a lot of intuitiveness about how do I feel about this project, right? Where do I see this project in 3 years? Where do I see it in 6 months? So some of them, like Tezos, for example, you look at the technology, you see what it's doing, you see how viable it is, you see how useful it is, you see all the players that are interested. So kind of a fundamental, and then you look at the technical and you're like, wow, this is amazing. It can do this, and it's kind of got a life of its own. So those are the types of things that I like to have, because I know no matter what the price is, it's going to do well. It's going to do well. It's got a life. It's got real development. It's got real use, real purpose. So I don't. And I think when you and I first started talking early on, I really didn't understand. You would say things like, you believe that the price was the arbiter of basically everything. And I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that because I just approach it from a different angle. But I think I understand a lot better now what you were saying. It was not the words you used; it was my understanding of those words. Anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, look, I'm a purist in that way, and that I believe that eventually value will be expressed in price. We live in a free market capitalist society. That's how we ascribe value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Tezos is a prime example of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tezos is the one example I would use as, okay, this thing's gaining adoption. It's real. What it's doing is real. It's being rewarded for that.
Yep.
You're seeing that, right?
Yep.
If you get a coin like XRP, and it seems like I'm picking on XRP a lot, but you could pick any number of coins.
Sure.
Okay? And I'm told, every day, look at this news, look at that, look at it. And I go to the chart and I see the things on its back.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, nobody's believing it.
Yeah.
If that was true, I'd be seeing it in the price. Right. And by the
Yeah.
way, that strategy has kept me off the rocks for a lot of years.
Sure.
It's kept me from shipwrecking. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I learned that the hard way, though. I've learned that
Yeah.
the hard way, 30 years of being in the markets.
Yeah.
But I've learned not to invest based on my beliefs.
Yeah.
I invest based on what the price is telling me.
Gotcha. This makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot from a lot of people, and I just appreciate you, and I'm glad you're available, and glad we've developed a friendship. And I've been involved in this kind of technology for a long time. I feel like in technology in general, and I even, because of your knowledge of markets and understanding in human, um, I guess, psychology or pathology, like your understanding of that, like it helps me to better understand where we're at, what's happening. Otherwise, like anybody, I can get stuck in my own silo, right? And only look at the technology, or only, feel some sort of intuitiveness about things.
Yeah, but what I'll say to that, and thank
Yeah.
you for that, like, you're always quite kind in your comments towards me, but the reality is that I'm not the guy making it happen. It's not the Santinos of the world making this crypto experiment work. It's honestly, it's guys like you working in the industry, actually doing it, actually the techies. I trust them a lot. And when they tell me something about a tech, they tend to be more honest.
Yeah.
Potential, sort of douchebags that are running things.
Yeah.
And, I don't listen to those guys. I listen to the techie guys. Because they also help keep me off the rocks. Price and what the technical guys say, and gals, there's women in that industry too. They tend to have a very uh, balanced view of what this is. They're actually more pragmatic and realistic than a lot of they're not moon boys. A lot of these
Oh,
tech people, they're like you. They're not moon boys. They're not saying, I didn't say this thing was going to go to $1,000, in 6 months.
right.
I'm
I said
telling
I could make a bridge adapter out of it. Isn't that cool?
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. This is
Right.
what I think it can do. This is where I think it can go. Can it be
Right.
revolutionary? Yeah, I do. I don't know what that means for price. That's
Right.
not what I'm focused on. I pay attention to those people,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
pay attention to because they're the ones that are making this happen. And there's a lot of them out there working in this industry. We're going to need more of them all the time.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Yeah. I saw, was it LinkedIn? It was somewhere, but I saw a chart of the amount of companies, coding houses, you name it, looking for blockchain people. It's starting to get a little ridiculous. So if you have a blockchain background, it looks like you're always going to have work, at least for the next several years.
It's crazy. I mean, one interesting place where you're seeing it a lot is in the military.
Oh yeah, for sure. For
I
sure.
mean, I'm not American, but in the country that I'm in,
Yeah.
um, you can go to a website and see what they're looking for, what they want. Technology specialists, blockchain specialists. You can see, you're beginning to see it in the military, right?
Yeah.
So that is certainly instructive.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's such a need too. Like almost any university has got some sort of program going on now, at least the higher level ones, dealing with higher level technology, AI, blockchain, and a lot of people could find. If it's not paying work, it could be internships. It could be just participation. Those places also need people that have been around and poking around and understand some things too. So it's really interesting. I think the sky's the limit for anyone interested in making a career change or going a little bit further with this technology. Every time I look, it's just kind of amazing all the opportunities that are there for people.
We're moving into a time. Part of this shift is so many things that are flippening. Like I call this the great flippening. We're beginning this now. We're going into this time now. And one of the things that's going to flip is we're going to move from uh, an economy that is, really sort of the foundational part of the economy are professionals. In other words, the lawyer types, medical profession, anything that's like a professional. You went to school, we're moving from that to where blue collar is going to become the new upper class.
Yeah.
Right. Techies are going to become the new upper class. Right. There's not going to be as much of a need for the other stuff. And
Sure.
God help you I don't want to offend anybody because, all education is noble, but, if you have a psych degree or sociology degree or any of the number of the ridiculous degrees that universities are handing out now, the marketplace doesn't need you. And you're going to be shown in very clear terms how it doesn't need you in very brutal ways.
Yeah.
That we're going into a time where you're going to have winners and you're going to have losers. It's going to be very stark,
Yeah.
right? In everything. So some will be radically blessed. Some will experience a lot of suffering in a lot of different ways. We're going into a very binary time period. And this isn't going to be what people believe, which is, everybody holds hands, we help everybody. That experiment's coming to an end because it doesn't work. That's an illusion. That was something that was sold to you. That's not how it works. You need to actually have some value to the world that you're in.
Yeah.
If you don't have any value, if you're not producing something, if you're not helping in some way, if you don't have some kind of a skill, it's not going to need you. And that may sound harsh, but unfortunately, we've coddled an entire generation to believe that, everybody can be a YouTube star,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or they don't really need to work,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or now you could have value. You can work at home through a computer. And if you have an internet feed, you could produce work that someone will pay you for.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But you have to know something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to know something. I think I think that's going to be a big switch, and it's going to be a very stark. You're going to see people, all kinds of millionaires, all of a sudden come out of the blue collar trades.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
Even in, so I'm not like a real estate mogul, but I have a little bit of real estate. And even finding, a competent electrician is tough. And when I find one, like I got to pay through the nose. There's already a need for those people: pipe fitters, plumbers, good carpenters, right? Yeah, I agree with you.
what's that old? It's a very old saying. I'm going to botch it, but it's, look, I'll take one engineer over 100 philosophers,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Anybody that's had to build a society, that's what they'll say.
Yeah,
Now, there's room for philosophers,
sure.
but they're not the ones that are going to build this new economy, right?
Yeah, yep.
We're going into a different time. Whatever worked will no longer work,
This is
right?
interesting. Yeah, interesting.
And
Interesting.
whatever wasn't working will begin to work.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but I invite people to turn their narratives upside down,
Yeah.
invert their narratives.
Yep.
Whatever they believe, invert it. Ask yourself, what's the opposite of what I believe?
Yep.
Try that experiment,
Yep. Thank you
because
for that.
the inversion is probably the more likely outcome.
Yeah. Wow. Biggest hurdle to get over is our own mind, right? Our own
Absolutely.
beliefs. Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks, Santino. This has been awesome. Anything else you want to add here at the end?
No, I don't think so. I just, people just, you know, this isn't a time to panic. Believe
Yeah.
me. I know that people are frightened.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Nobody likes to get up in the morning and see red. That's the worst thing. But I'm telling you, this is temporary. Uh, if you're in precious metals and you're in cryptos, and you have your assets predominantly in USD, believe me, you're going to be better than fine. These investments will start to work. What's coming, what central banks are about to do, the reactions we're about to see are going to inject massive amounts of money into this economy, and your investments will do very well. Just sit still. Don't do anything silly.
Wonderful news. Sage advice. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks so much, Moo, and thank you for inviting me as always. I always really enjoy chatting with you a lot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed chatting with you as well. Hang on the line real quick. I'm just going to kill this recording and I want to say goodbye to you. Okay.
Sure. See you guys.